In this video, I'm going to be sharing my top 5 tips on how to perform our 30-second maximal sprint workout. Hello everybody, welcome to Boxing Science. In this video, I'm going to be sharing top 5 tips on how to perform our 30-second max out sprint protocol. So if you're a keen follower of Boxing Science, you'll have seen it many times across our YouTube and Instagram pages when we're putting athletes to the absolute limit, doing 30 seconds of activity over just 4 repetitions, and you can see them really putting in their effort and being in lots of pain after. What's the actual session consist of, and what are the benefits for boxing? So the session consists of 4 30-second max out sprints. This is challenging an athlete's ability to produce high intensities and high force actions, have the ability to endure that over 30 seconds, then being able to repeat that over multiple repetitions. How does this transfer to boxing? First of all, it's challenging power endurance, the ability to produce high amounts of intensity and then have the ability to endure that, whether you've got your opponent hurt, being able to put punches in bunches and going through the gears, but also after them intense bouts of activity, being able to recover and then go again. And then also it's mentally tough. You know that you've been to that dark place in training camp. Ability to kind of bite down like gum shield and keep going is very difficult. But a lot of athletes, when they get tired, end up going into that endurance mode, end up trying to pace themselves a little bit more. Whereas on the 30-second sprints, they're having to repeatedly produce high forces, high speeds under excessive and extreme levels of fatigue. This is the reason why the 30-second max out sprints are mentally tough as well as physically challenging. But what does it do physiologically? This is creating peripheral adaptations, helping our muscles improve its ability to extract and utilize oxygen from the blood. We're going into high intensities, our heart is pumping fast, it's sending oxygen towards the muscles. Our muscles' job then is to extract that from the blood. And then we need oxidative enzymes to be able to utilize that and use it as energy. The more oxidative enzymes that we have, and the better that they use it, the more that we can use for aerobic performance. So even though this looks like an anaerobic session, as in being very short in nature, very high intensity in nature as well, it's actually improving our aerobic capacity. The reason why is because the 30-second max out sprints help deplete the muscle cell, which will stimulate the cell signaling pathway PGC1 alpha, which will help stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis. It's depleting our muscles to send the cell signaling pathways strong to be able to create fast and effective adaptations. So even though this seems a very simple session to do, 30 seconds on, 3 minutes off, it needs to be implemented in the right way to help stimulate physiological adaptations. So in this next section now, I'm going to be offering my top 5 tips on how to implement this into your strength conditioning sessions. So tip number 1 is choosing the modality to suit your athlete. So choosing the mode of exercise to do these 30-second max out sprints. There's 4 or 5 different options that we can use. We can use a watt bike, use a prowler, we can use hill sprints, but predominantly we either use the curve treadmill or the assault bike. We've been doing these 30-second max out sprints for almost 10 years now. Probably the first 7 to 8 years using the curve treadmill. The reason why we use the curve treadmill, because we can get feedback on the speed and the non-motorized nature of it makes sure that our athletes can sprint as fast as they can, and their challenge is to be able to control that decline over 30 seconds. Probably one of the best ways to be able to do it, and we've had some athletes in some real sticky situations after these 30-second max out sprints. However, a few things that I noticed when using the curved treadmill that could limit performance and limit that adaptation. Number 1, their sprinting ability. So their ability based on their genetics or their running technique, whether that's down to hip mobility, hamstring tightness, or just their ability to sprint. Their ability to produce high intensities would be quite limited. That will limit the physical adaptation that we're able to get from that session. Doing it with bad running technique can increase injury risk. Only a handful of times that we've had like people pull up with hamstrings or hamstring injuries or anything like that. It did happen from time to time. When they get fatigued, it was quite hard to get them going on the sprints to be able to produce them high speed. So what we saw was a much higher decline than we would particularly see on the assault bike. So around 2020, we got the assault bike, started doing 30-second sprints, and what we saw, an athlete was able to hit their highest point of intensity, was able to maintain that a lot better over the 30 seconds, but also over a certain amount of reps. There were no injuries. What we saw was the same lactate response. So the lactate response was key to see how depleted the muscle cell was. Getting them high lactates said to us, right, we're getting the same adaptation here that we would do with the curve. So even though that the curve still has its benefits, we still use it sometimes with 30-second sprints, but predominantly we'd be using the air bike. Another factor is athletes do this towards the start of training camp, and if they're coming in a little bit heavier, this is increasing them impact forces going through the lower body during sprinting action. High amounts of fatigue, chances of inflammation, soreness, and also increased chances of injury. Whereas like on the air bike, we've got no ground impact forces there. So the athletes aren't getting as sore or as tired or reducing that likelihood of injury during doing it on the air bike. The other modalities to mention is a prowler. Prowler's quite good, but you just got to make sure that you're not doing it too heavy. I'd say around about your body weight, and to make sure that you're getting them distance targets in there. Hill sprints, you need to make sure that the hill is long enough but not that steep, and also doing it on a grassy verge would be better to do that as well. You've got the watt bike, but the watt bike is very lower body dominant to be able to get them high intensities, and also that lactate accumulation and that local muscular fatigue increase quite a lot in a very short amount of time, especially with boxers, so that will limit that physical adaptation. Whereas like the air bike has the handles, so then it's a full body workout for that. So if you've got access to a curve or air bike, go for that for the 30-second sprints, and then look to probably do the prowler or the hill sprints as a different modality. But what I would say is choose one mode of exercise and stick with that throughout that training block, because then you can monitor progress effectively and be able to manipulate the volumes and intensity. Okay, so tip number 2 is to attack the interval and maintain intensity by 60%. Somebody to do 30-second sprints or to run for 30 seconds, you're very likely to see a high tempo, but the same tempo throughout. What this is challenging you to do is to produce the highest amount of intensity and being able to control that over 30 seconds. So it's very important for athletes to attack the interval rather than trying to pace it. If you're working with an athlete for the first time, trying to unlock them gears into an athlete, what we'll do in the warm-up is to do some 10-second sprints to get a good idea on what their maximum speed is or maximum intensity is on the air bike. And with them 10-second sprints, you can see, right, let's say an athlete's hitting 1500 watts, 10-second sprints, right, your challenge now is hit that speed in 7 seconds, trying to maintain it as much as you can over the 30-second period. And that is the main way that you're going to be able to attack that interval, being able to promote the physical adaptations that are required from the 30-second maximal sprints. You're going to record the speed over 7 seconds, 17 seconds, and 27 seconds to try and formulate a plot to see what the trend is of that athlete to control that decline in intensity. And the challenge is to keep it above 60%, especially on that first repetition. So you hit your maximum speed. So let's say that's 1000 watts, making it quite easy to work it out on this video. Let's say your max speed is 1000 watts. You're wanting to try and keep that above 600 for that set. Makes it quite challenging, and that needs to be monitored from 7 seconds, 17 seconds, and 27, because you want that to be more or less a straight decline, rather than what we're likely to see is a drop and then drop across. So making sure that it's a steady decline from that 7 seconds, that peak intensity, through to 27 seconds. Tip number 3 is to take baseline numbers, set targets, and monitor progress. So just mentioned there about attacking the interval, how it's important to understand and analyze an athlete's peak intensity to then set them a target in their 30-second sprints. Let's say that they can't hit that because they have a certain physiology, because like some athletes are endurance based and then other athletes quite explosive and aren't able to maintain that intensity over 30 seconds. It's important to do a baseline test. So we do at Boxing Science a 30-second Wingate test where we'll do 2 repetitions. So we'll do 30 seconds on, 3 minutes off, and then we'll do a second rep of 30 seconds. So we're encouraging our athletes to go max out in them 2 repetitions, getting the scores from there. And then this will set targets for that athlete throughout that training block. So we'll take down the numbers, like I said, 7, 17, 27 seconds for each repetition. Keep a log of that to then help set targets for each session. Say like, right, this is what you hit on the second rep, this is what you hit on the third rep, to make sure that you're creating the maximum speed and intent, because as soon as they get fatigued, they want to go into that endurance mode and they might not hit the numbers that is required to promote that physical adaptation. So it's really important to get them numbers, to set targets, but also then monitor progress, because what you're likely to see when you do 30-second max out sprints, you're likely to see some pretty fast changes, and that can help boost an athlete feeling like they're getting fit, because when they do this session, it's very soul searching after a workout. You know, they're laying on the floor, they're feeling unfit. Last thing that they want to do is not get that feedback and showing that they're actually doing well. So when an athlete is rolling around on the floor and I can just go up to them, this is the reason why you're feeling up today, is because you beat your numbers by 5 or 10%. You know, you tap that first interval, that's 10% faster than what you did last week. It's really important to monitor that progress, obviously show that the training block is working, but also to give your athlete some benefit, some psychological benefit to doing these sessions. Tip number 4, how often do you do this throughout training week? So I ask this question a lot across social media, how many times to do this session, how long for? It's a very, very short window of opportunity here, because we have a 10-week training camp, going to start sparring like from 6 or 7 weeks out. We don't want to be doing these 30-second sprints when we're doing sparring, because this will have a bit of an impact, a bit of a fatigue element going into sparring sessions. So do this for a very short amount of time. And also the amount of sessions is relatively short to promote adaptation. You only need 9 sessions of this to see a significant change in your physical performance. It's between 9 and 12. So I'd do either 2 or 3 sessions a week of this for anywhere between 3 and 4 weeks. And I make sure that I split these up over the week, make sure there's at least 1 or 2 days in between doing these sessions. The 5th and final tip, a little trick in the boxing science tool bag, is our cluster sprint sessions. So splitting up the 30-second sprints either into 10-second intervals or 20-second intervals to help increase intensity. So this increase in intensity will help promote adaptation further, but will also reduce lactate accumulation, which will help maintain intensity for longer, but then also won't have a negative impact onto your other performance during strength conditioning and, most importantly, during boxing as well. So the main cluster that I'm going to talk to you about is a 20-second cluster. So that's 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off, 20 seconds on again, and then you have 3 minutes off. You're just trying to increase that intensity over the 20 seconds. So instead of a 60% decrease in performance, on the first 20-second interval, you're hitting that peak intensity and trying to maintain that over 78%. You then try and hit that peak intensity again. You're probably likely to hit about 85% of what you hit the first time, and then try and maintain that over 70%. So overall, you're doing higher volume and higher intensity, but due to the 20-second break in between, you're actually reducing that lactate response, which will then reduce the fatigue, make sure that you're increasing that intensity throughout the repetitions, and will promote faster adaptations. So what I'd do with this, I'd split up your 30-second max out sprints. So let's say if you're doing 3 per week, I'd be doing at least 1 or 2 sessions on the 20-second clusters, especially after about 2 weeks. I'd be like kind of phasing in the 20-second clusters instead of increasing the absolute volume of 30-second max out sprints, more looking to manipulate the reps into clusters to make sure that we're increasing the total training load through intensity rather than through trying to do more reps on the 30-second max out sprints. Okay guys, so they're my top 5 tips for 30-second max out sprints. If you're wanting to give this a go, there's 2 different ways that you can do it. You can either access our Ultimate Fitness for Boxing and Combat Sports, or our Assault Bike Conditioning Program. Fantastic programs, help improve high intensity performance, and both include 30-second max out sprints, helps manipulate the volume and intensity in these workouts, and also helps you kind of bridge the gap between 30-second max out sprints into your main conditioning block, and then help peak for fight night. So the link is in the description for those. You can use the discount code BOXINGSCIENCE50 to get 50% discount on both programs. So thank you very much for watching. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button and hopefully see you on the next video at Boxing Science.